Well, thank you for talking to me about this. This was quite the unexpected thrill ride. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun. I didn't know what to expect. It just kept surprising me, which is nice because that's hard to do. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. That was our goal. We just wanted to make something that would be an escape for people and that was entertaining and just fun because we had so much fun making it.
Yeah, and it seems like there are so many things that could have gone wrong just from doing like this kind of project and trying to pull something off in a pandemic. I mean, it just seems like there's so many things that could have not worked out, and it did.
It's true. And at every turn, we all sort of looked at each other and went, can we actually do this? This is this shouldn't work, and yet it does somehow. There's something should be getting in the way, but no, every obstacle at every turn, either Luke and Nick or our producers or our incredible director of photography, Kevin, or one of us would come up with an idea that would solve any problem that got in our way. And, I think for us, we were also starved for not only social interaction, but some sort of creative productivity at that point, that we were willing to just dive in and go, all right, let's do this experiment. Let's just see what we can accomplish. And lo and behold, we have Untitled Horror Movie.
And I love how this is so not the kind of character that at least we've seen you do recently. So, I mean, was she very defined on the page as a character? Did you get to have a hand in developing who she is and how she would be?
I mean, a little bit. I helped to kind of further the idea because obviously it was a very collaborative process throughout. But I was excited to see what Luke and Nick would come up with, because I've been friends with both, Luke Baines, obviously from Shadowhunters, and Nick Simon I've known for years and years. And it's one of those things that I was curious to see what they would write with, for me to do. And I was thrilled. Again, that's the joy when a friend writes the script. They know what you haven't gotten the chance to do. And, they knew I hadn't gotten to do comedy in a really long time, and that I had never really played a character like this, at least not for a good long while. And it was so fun to get to dive into Sweet Chrissy, who is just the most overcommitted and underinformed individual. But it was so much fun. I love doing comedy. It's something that I, rarely get a chance to do anymore. And it was great to sort of stretch those muscles a little bit that have not been used for a while.
Was this something too where you could add or change things kind of on the fly because you were doing it this way? I mean, did that change how you got to shoot it as well?
Absolutely. So through the magic of earpieces and headphones, we were all able to be completely isolated. So we were on Zoom together for the group scenes and for all of that, but all of our audio and video was completely isolated as it was recorded, which allowed them all of the freedom in editing to basically have 6 cameras rolling and 6 separate microphones at all times. And then, if we were to ad lib or throw something in there, or somebody takes us on a tangent, we can all go with it, and they have it all captured. So it gave us all of the freedom in the world to play and to find what the movie was actually going to be, both tonally and in actuality, branching out from the script as we were shooting.
Since you're basically doing everything for yourself on this, did you find yourself enjoying like one department more than the other, since you were sort of like the lead of each department for yourself?
Yeah, it was simultaneously very exciting and very terrifying. I think all of us wanted to not be the one to ruin the film, as it were. I have such massive respect for crews and for their knowledge base and their skill set that they, have obviously trained and studied and done all of these things that I have not done. I've had the luxury of working with some incredible crews that have taught me a lot over the years and answered all of my many questions as someone who wants to direct in the future. But there's a big difference between seeing something and understanding it versus practically doing it yourself. But thanks to our director of photography, Kevin Duggan, who ever so patiently, with the patience of a saint, taught all of us everything we know about every department. I've always thought that sort of what Kevin does, being a director of photography and lighting, it's always been magic to me. There's a way that directors of photography paint with light and can do so much with, what seemingly to the human eye is kind of amorphous in a way. But through a few little bits of rudimentary knowledge, I've gotten to play in that a little bit more, even with self-tapes and interviews and things that I've done after. I've had a lot of fun playing and seeing what I can come up with after the fact.
I love the use of shadow in this too, because it does actually play like its own character in the movie.
Absolutely. And some of that was purposeful, and some of it was we'd be setting up a shot and Kevin would go, wait, what was that? What made that shadow? You were gonna use that. How do we make this work? And that was the fun of the whole process, is that it was all a grand experiment, that we were all just open to going, all right, well, we're gonna give this our best shot and see what happens.
Do you leave a project like this going, okay, you know, now I feel more secure that I could direct if the right thing came along? Or do you go like, oh my God, I realize there's so many more things I don't know about yet?
A bit of both. You know, I think every bit of knowledge helps to fuel that. And I know for me, I have shadowed a few directors and I've done a little bit of studying here and there as far as that goes. And it only fueled my fire even more. You know, I don't think I'll ever stop telling stories in front of the camera and creating characters, but as a director behind the camera, there's so many more tools at your disposal that you can use to tell a story and to say things in interesting ways. And it only fueled my fire more to learn about those things. That being said, I know that there is so much yet that I still don't know, but I learn more by doing. So it makes me more excited to dive in.
What was it like to shoot this during a pandemic? I mean, we were in sort of this weird period for a while when production shut down, where people were like, oh, we'll be back in production in a couple of weeks. And then there was the period where it was like, okay, maybe we'll never get back to production. And it sort of had to find its way. So what was it like to do something like this and then also figure out how to still build chemistry when you're not able to actually be in the same room?
Yeah, that was definitely a consideration. I think retrospectively, it was very cathartic in a way, in that even though we don't mention the pandemic at all in the story, you have 6 characters that are dealing with this period of uncertainty and an unknown future and not knowing what their lives are going to consist of. And they all deal with it in very different ways. And thinking back on it, all of us were in the same place. We were all at home, not knowing what the world was going to look like in, 6 hours, let alone 6 weeks. And it was definitely, I think, a way of therapeutically working through this place that all of us were in mentally and emotionally, as well as telling a story that will hopefully help other people do the same. But as far as the chemistry goes, as you know, so much of the film relies on that banter and that kind of chemistry. I was lucky in the fact that I knew Tim and Claire and Luke from beforehand. And so I had a bit of a relationship there already, but that was a big question for all of us, because if you don't have that spark, that whole movie isn't going to work. And somehow from the first table read on Zoom, something just clicked. And all of us looked at each other virtually and went, oh, actually, there's something here. And we're all on the same wavelength, even though some of us have never even met. And still to this day, we all have not physically been in the same room together. Yeah. So hopefully that'll happen soon. And we'll be able to either, go on a group vacation, or, I don't know, maybe shoot a sequel in person.
Shadowhunters was a show that had a very loyal and very devoted fan base. Has that fever died down at all, or do you still get comments from fans about it?
It's so interesting, because I never expected this when I first started the show. I was so excited, and being a fan of YA as a kid as well, I know the responsibility of taking on a story like this and taking on a character like Clary that people are so attached to, in a world that people relate to so much and love. But the Shadow fam is so special. We love to call them the Shadow fam, because from our cast to our crew to our creatives to the fandom, it's all one big family. We really all have the same passion for the story, and that has not ceased. And I truly don't think it ever will. And that's all a credit to the fandom, in that they have taken this community far beyond us and the show and our characters, and created this beautiful space where people can feel accepted and people can just truly be themselves and find kindred spirits from all over the world. And it's just in a space like social media that can have so many different facets that run the gamut, to have a space that is so loving and positive. It's just a gift to be a part of. But seeing through the pandemic, so many new people discovered Shadowhunters as well and went on the journey anew, and seeing those comments online and meeting people at virtual Comic-Cons and doing all of that, it's been almost a resurgence of, fresh enthusiasm into the world that we're all just so excited to see.
You also were so great on Arrow because you had that really tough job of joining the show and still finding a way to have that fan base embrace you, and you did that. I mean, I think you fit in with that show really well and in a way that is really challenging. And I personally was very bummed to hear that the spinoff wasn't moving forward. How hard was it to get that news and know that you wouldn't have closure for Mia as a character in the way that you did get that somewhat with Clary?
Yeah, I mean, joining the Arrowverse in and of itself was such a pleasure. I mean, coming off of Shadowhunters, I was so bummed thinking that my next job probably wouldn't be as active or as stunt heavy, and I wouldn't have a chance to use those fighting skills at work every day, or to be immersed in a fandom in a world like Shadowhunters. And then Arrow happened, and I was so thrilled to be able to dive in head first. Granted, I didn't know until after I was cast that I would be playing Oliver and Felicity's daughter, which is once again a whole level of responsibility that I was not expecting, but was very excited for, and ready for the challenge of diving in and going, how do I take these two characters and this relationship that is so beloved by the fandom and do justice by it, and create a character that's an amalgamation of these two really specific, wonderfully developed humans. And I was just so grateful that Steven and Emily and everyone on the show and in the whole Arrowverse welcomed me in with open arms and just made me feel so at home. And including the fandom as well. I was a bit nervous to see how they would accept Mia and what they would think, because the take that we took with her was very distinct, and there was really, you were gonna either love it or not, and most people really took to Mia, and I was so grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, look, the one thing you're always sure of in the entertainment industry is that eventually a job will come to a close. But the great thing about the Arrowverse and the great thing about Mia is that the Arrowverse still exists, and Mia lives on in Comic-Cons, and as people rewatch the show, and all of these things that continue to happen. And as much as I would have loved to continue her story, I was just so grateful to be a part of it.
When you have an experience like that, do they tell you why the show doesn't get picked up? Do they ever give you a reason for their decision, or do the actors not get that information?
Unfortunately, at least as in my experience, actors are usually the last to know anything and have the least information when it comes to these things. So I don't know why. I don't even have the authority to speak on the matter, really, other than I wish it had gone forward, and I was excited to see what the future held, but that's how the cookie crumbles.
Are you still game to return to the character in some capacity, especially if legends find themselves in 2040?
I mean, look, the Arrowverse is what it is, and I have no idea what their future plans are, but I would jump at the chance to go back and play again. Again, there's so many wonderful people over at WB and CW and the whole Berlanti world. I loved working there, and if they ever need me back, I'm happy to go shoot arrows again.
Acting didn't start out as a planned career for you, but you went from stage to film and TV. You've been, working pretty consistently. When you realized that this was what you actually wanted to do, what did you envision for yourself? What did being a successful actor look like in the beginning?
It's funny you ask that, because that's changed over the years, and that's something that I love most about my career, is it's constantly evolving and constantly changing. At first, I would say that it's very different than it is now, even. I wanted to be an economist before I was an actor. I wanted to, work in financial planning or developmental economics or something of that nature. And that's actually what I went to school for. And, growing up in Kansas City, they have a huge theater community there as well. And my plan was to work in a financial institution and then that closes at 5, so I can make it to the theater by 8 o'clock for curtain, and it works out perfectly. And that was what I thought my life would be. And I thought, how great, I can, do both things that I love. Then I ended up booking a Broadway show and moved to New York. And then I went, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to live in New York and work in a Broadway theater, and this will be fantastic. Then I booked a job in LA, and 10 years later, I'm still here going back and forth doing all these things. So at this point, I'm just open to whatever the future holds. And as long as I get to keep working in different mediums, I'd love to go back to theater. I'd love to do more film. I'd love to do another TV show. I want to direct soon. I'm developing projects. I'm doing music. I'm kind of putting my hand in everything, because I think diversity in creative exploits are what fuels my soul the most and keeps me growing and keeps me challenged. And that's what I would like to do. I think just continuing forward motion is my idea of success.
When you found out that you would be filming a scene for this where you essentially have to strangle yourself, what goes through your head? What's that like to shoot? What's it like to watch that later?
Watching it's a bit funny. I'm a bit funny about watching myself, but that's just part of the job, I guess. I did turn to Luke and go, is this because Clary killed Jonathan in Shadowhunters? Is this why this is happening? But he gives the sly Luke Baines smirk, so you never really know why. But no, it was a lot of fun. I knew, again, given that Luke and I are such good friends, he knows I have stunt mats at my house, and so he knows that if anyone's equipped during a pandemic to safely do stunts, it's me. So hence the fact that I end up doing a lot of the stunts in the film. But it's a lot of fun to get to try your hand literally at something new. And being a huge fan of thrillers and horror and all of those things growing up, it's fun to get to experiment with, what do I have in my house that can make this as creepy as possible, and how can I manipulate the few tools that I have to create an environment that would be a real set.
How hard is it to figure out those emotional levels or what you want to do physically when you don't have somebody walking you through all that with you?
Yeah. Well, we were really lucky. I mean, Nick is such a fantastic director and is so collaborative and really honest. And that's all you can ask for from a director, is someone who can kind of guide you, having the scope of the whole film to sort of help you find those levels and find where it fits in the greater realm of the story. But also, we were lucky enough to be able to call on some folks that we'd worked with before from Shadowhunters in, all the different departments, including stunts. We reached out to a few of our stunt performers and coordinators and friends from that show, who then sent us a video of, hey, if we were to do these things in our house, this is how to safely do it, but also make it look realistic enough on camera, and how to shoot it, and where to position the camera, and how to position yourself with the camera, which are normally all things the stunt coordinator would tell you and have planned out with the director and the camera operators on the day. But in this case, we had to do it all ourselves. So we were really lucky to have those resources, and given the pandemic, a lot of people had the time to take a few minutes to teach us, and we're happy to help, given that we all needed a bit of creativity in our lives at that point.
Well, I was very impressed with everything that you pulled off in this, because it just seemed like there were endless possible challenges along the way with something like this.
Absolutely, and there were, but that was the joy of it, is that, as creatives and as artists, we always tend to be overcoming obstacles in one way or another. And this was just another opportunity to do that. So thank you. I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was very creative. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.